So one of the things that we have been working on is embodiment. And for us, embodiment is not only being aware of the sensations of our bodies, but actually bringing our bodies and our emotions together with our minds to create an integrated way of acting in the workplace and in life. And what we want to show you now is an example on how to have embodied conversations. Because what we have felt is that when we invite teams to have these kinds of experiences, we end up talking about embodiment and not necessarily being embodied while talking to each other. So this is what we want to share with you now. What I feel now, Mike, addressing this topic about embodiment is excitement in my body, because I'm opening up as something that I'm really passionate about, but also confusion, because I've been facing this limitation again and again when I sit in front of groups and invite them to talk, to embody themselves, and sometimes I don't manage. So this is what happens to me now when I open this topic with you.
Yeah, and for me this is the same as we try to communicate with others who are not here in the room, others, we have cameras around us. I start feeling my hands very sweaty, I start thinking, am I going to say the right thing? Is this? And I can see that I'm already trying to make myself look good as opposed to really focus on the subject and bring that to the audience that we're trying to reach.
So it is important first that we acknowledge what is happening right here and now in our bodies. And what we feel is that there is not only confusion from my side, but also a little bit of tension of the setup that we have here from your side. And it's good to acknowledge this, because whenever we want to achieve something together, we carry with us what we are feeling. And normally we try to put that in a box, leave that outside of the room, of the meeting room, but actually we can't. So this is going to impact the way that we are with others. So then going back to the topic of embodiment, I feel that one of the challenges that I perceive is how to bring the collective aspect of embodiment in a work setup. I feel afraid whenever I have the opportunity to work with a team within an organization and invite them to move, physically move in different ways. This triggers in me a lot of fears and anxieties of not being good enough, or of not being able to provide a clear framework for them to actually find meaning into the experience.
Yeah, and I get the sense when you're saying that that there's even a fear of not being good enough, or of being rejected in some sense. And that's also what I feel, even just hearing you speak about that, is this feeling of being in a situation and the group sort of turning against me, or being like, what, this is... And for me, this is where really understanding how so the skills of embodiment can be of use in that setting is one of the key insights that we can bring. And that's what we want to do a bit today. And for me, for example, in a conversation starter like we just had, of bringing what is actually here in the space, what are the tensions, what are the fears in me, I now understand where you are, and I feel more relaxed having brought the fact that the cameras and the trying to get it right is there. I feel more relaxed and able to focus. And for us, that's what we often do in embodied conversations, in meetings, in work, that it's about first checking in, first having that. And then we wanted to try a little exercise right now of a role play where we can have an embodied appraisal conversation, for example, and see what the difference is. And we'll comment it as we go along, just to really emphasize where there are added value parts that come in from bringing the emotions, bringing what's going on in my body, and being able to work on that through the body.
Mm-hmm. And before we go into that, that I'm really looking forward to do it with you, is this awareness, what you were saying before about when you bring or try to bring embodiment into a group, and this feeling how the group is turning against you, and this fear that appears is a fear that I can really relate to. And what happens to me when including the body or having embodied conversations is that when fears are on top of the table, we are able to deal with them. And we're able to see that even though you and I are committed to bring embodiment into our organizations, businesses, teams, we are afraid. We're afraid of what would happen. And this makes us feel, at least it makes me feel closer to you. It makes me feel more honest. It makes me feel that we are being open, which is an amazing feeling to have with a colleague when we are planning to do anything.
I wanted to add to that, in that situation where I'm standing in front of a group and I feel that fear in me. I feel often my plexus here clench. I feel my toes tight. Often my hands get a bit sweaty. And when I notice those points, as you're saying, those anchors, they bring me back to my body, and I go, there's fear coming up. There's a sense of be careful. And what I've learned to do, and this is why embodiment can be so powerful, is to say, am I being too careful? Is the fear really that big? Are the consequences really that big? Or can I relax some parts of my body and just be a bit more present, a bit more in flow? Because sometimes there are real dangers, and I do need to be careful not to, and I do need to be listening carefully. But it's really about sensing that, and that releases a lot of energy, which enables me then to put that towards a good conversation, towards really engaging with the clients.
It's interesting because what you're talking about is being aware of those sensations, which is not a given. Not everybody has access or a clear access to whatever it is that they are feeling in every moment. And it's not only about awareness, but it's also acting accordingly to what you are feeling, which is also a barrier that a lot of people feel. It's like they may be feeling a lot of fear or tension, anxiety, anger, sadness, which are emotions that are really common in the workplace, but they decide to hide them. They decide just to put a barrier on top and not really show themselves as they are, because they may be judged as not being too professional. So what we're trying to do here with this embodiment, or what I'm passionate about, is trying to redefine what professional means in the workplace. And I believe that now is the moment where people are searching for purpose, people are searching for meaning, people are searching for spaces where they can appear whole with everything that they are. And Embodied Conversations is a great tool to support people learn how to be more aware of themselves, and find the courage to actually act accordingly to what they are feeling, and creating of course, the collective context for that to happen.
Yeah, and another example that comes to my mind is a leader that we were coaching, that we were working with, who gave us the example where he and his team were aiming to work in a much more self-organized, more non-hierarchical, healthier way, at least for that team, when for many years, 20, 30 years, I believe, they had been working relatively hierarchically. That leader was very much in charge. And he noticed as his team came to him with a proposal and said, hey, we've got these things we'd like to do. He put together a very complex Excel which explained how they were going to do it, and sent it to the team. And the team said, but this is the old way. We want to do it all together. We want to come up with these different things in this plan together. And he told us he noticed in his belly that he was clenching. He was going into fight mode. He was going to say, yes, but I know what needs to happen. I know. And he did. He did know exactly what needed to happen. And he could take all those decisions. But he noticed that, and he relaxed his belly, and he leaned back, and he said, okay, let's try something new. And for me, what's so interesting is how, because he wasn't just thinking, oh, I need to do something new, but his body was staying in that position, in that movement, those emotions were coming up. Instead, he used his body as a way to relax his emotions, to bring other emotional states, and therefore be able to really fully embodied bring a different way of working.
Well, what happens to me when I listen to you is a combination between excitement to see that is possible, and we have seen many, many times that it's possible for leaders to change their awareness and to act differently, and also a big question. It's like an open space of how can we support better these leaders? How can we embody this conversational aspect ourselves? How can we be even more coherent? And also the aspect of power. The aspect of power and exercising power is something that is very present in all businesses, all organizations, is all over life. And it's something that can be very triggering. And especially for leaders, when working with these embodied conversation tools and skills, we see that they need to be open. Leaders, when they are open to learn and when they are open to let others come and be part of the conversation, a creation conversation, then it works fine. But when leaders are clenching to power, clenching to status, clenching to all ways of exercising leadership, embodied conversations doesn't really work, because embodied conversations is bringing more complexity into the conversation, bringing my sensations, bringing my emotions, and being open to listen yours. And if a leader is not really into that, then it doesn't really work. But it doesn't mean that then the team will work as well. No, actually, you're missing a lot of the things that could be valuable to create ownership, commitment, and work better.
Yeah, and as I hear, it was funny, I noticed as I was listening to you, my leg was tensing up, and there was a part of me going, yes, but, because actually for me, it was the complete opposite process of, I actually had a lot of difficulty as a leader being the one who clenches up and moves forwards, and I was always very open, and I would bring everybody in and hear emotions, and we wouldn't get anywhere, and it would frustrate people, and we wouldn't be, competitive, or we wouldn't be achieving our goals. So for some leaders, it's also about learning that embodied skill of resoluteness, of moving towards things. And as I speak about that, I get energy, because that for me has been such a gift to be able to know in what situations I need to shift into action, in what situations I need to relax and open.
Mm-hmm. So I would like to invite you to do an exercise, brief exercise that is part of this embodied conversation experience, which is just to remain in silence and to see from the conversation that we just had, what is resonating, what happened in your body because of this interaction that we had. So again, in these moments, the invitation is always to take a couple of breaths and to scan your body, and feel again if there is tensions or numbness in any part of your body, if there are any emotions that are triggered, even if you don't understand why they are there, or any thoughts as well that I just keep on running. That's it, and whenever you're ready, please do share if anything you found was meaningful.
Yeah, there's a feeling of warmth in my belly, on my shoulders. There's a feeling also of somehow we touched on essential parts. In particular for me, that bringing in power as a main element, and looking at what that does in our bodies, how we can shift that in our bodies. And as you were saying, for me, there's a lot of that. There's also turbulence. There's questions, of how do we continue on this path? How do we continue learning? And there's a lot of joy in doing this with you, and trust that this is what's needed. One of the things that I've been noticing and that many others working in this field of embodiment have been bringing up increasingly in the last years is how much these skills, in particular of embodied conversations, are so crucial on addressing some of the key questions, key global issues that we're facing, whether it's the polarization in society, to have a conversation with another who has diametrically opposed positions to you, but to actually be able to share what is happening inside of you and to keep coming back to yourself, to myself, and working with that, that is nearly impossible to do without embodiment. Whether it's climate change, where there is a required change of behavioral patterns, that also requires embodiment to really, on an individual but also systemic level, start shifting things. Whether it's racial inequity or gender questions, all of these things are deeply attached to our bodies, the reactions, the behaviors that we've always had, and the emotional states that come from that. And so for me, this is where the societal impact of this is so important. We talk about it for leaders in companies or for ourselves on an individual level, but these skills are so crucial in the long run for society. And it's, for me, that's the passion that also gets me really burning.
That's beautiful. But what happens to me when I listen to you is that I connect with those questions, those questions of how can we bring this to more people? How can we embody that ourselves in a much better and strong way? And I'm fully convinced that there are so many leaders that are trying to bring this into the way that they lead. This complexity of the human being, this wholeness into everything that they do, but they're also afraid. They also have a lot of questions. So what we would love to do is to support you as leaders, developing also the skills that you need in order to bring more embodiment into the way that you lead and provide safe spaces for those around you to feel free and open to explore with this beautiful tool.